Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. This is Dave Piper and Cody Alakis. Cody, say hey.
Hello.
And we're back again. The listeners have spoken, and they asked us, I got an email from League of Legends 420, very clever name, and asked us, would you guys please do your top 5 junglers? So I said, absolutely, that'd be fine. So, honestly, first person that sends me a top 5 thing, we'll do that one next. So anybody that wants to send it in, that's fine. You can do it through the YouTube messages, or you can email me at cold09823@yahoo.com, and we'll do any top 5 you want. Like, if you want to do something silly, like, that's fine too. Like, top 5 people you want to support you bottom lane, or top 5, top 5 champs with combos that work together, stuff like that. Anything. Get creative with it. Send it in. We'll do it. It's fun. So, all right. But this week we're doing top 5 junglers. And Cody, how about did you come up with your list?
Okay, so what I did is I first looked at a couple things to just filter out most of the champions. I looked how well do they sustain in the jungle by themselves, which is how easily can you counter jungle them. I looked at how strong their ganks were, and I looked at how their late game scaling was, which includes team fights, general damage, and stuff like that.
Okay.
So, how about you, Dave? What did you do?
I chose to just base my picks on if I like them on my team, which is almost how I always do my picks. The problem with that is, and Cody will agree, because we've talked about this before, jungler is very based upon team comp. You would agree with that?
Yeah.
Junglers are very relevant to what your team comp looks like. Like, if you have, a lot of CC, then you might go with a different jungler, stuff like that. I mean, you guys aren't stupid, you guys know. So, that's why it's kind of hard to say that, but that's basically how I did it, and these are just kind of roundabout the best, in my opinion. I like to see them on my team. So, Cody, unless you have any objections.
Just one last thing.
Oh, okay, of course, objections.
Everyone keep in mind that this is the patch, not the Diana patch, but the one right after that. So all the comments about, I'd play this champion, you gotta realize that these videos were done at that time and not when you're making the comment a couple months later, because champions fluctuate in their playability and stuff like that.
Amen. Very nice, Cody. Very nice. All right, so Cody, jump right in. We're going to start with you as we always do. What's your number 5 jungler?
My number 5 is Lee Sin.
Well, Lee Sam.
Yeah, Lee Sam, as I like to call him. I picked him for a couple reasons. First of all, he's just a solid pick when it comes to jungling. He has a decent clear time. He can counter jungle pretty easily. And he has decent ganks. So all around, he can do well on a team. Any team, pretty much. But what he excels in is early presence on the map. You can, with Lee Sin, you can gank at level 2, then go take another thing, gank at level 3. There's no, set timing for him. So everyone on the map has to be aware of you at all times. It forces people to buy wards earlier, and generally you can get your team quite ahead with it. And the reason I put him at number 5 with all of these supposed really good things is he doesn't really have too much crowd control except for his ultimate, which he gets at 6, obviously. And he relies on his abilities for damage, so naturally he's going to fall off a little bit late game. But other than that, he's still a really solid pick. So, Dave, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is one of my favorite junglers, and obviously because it's on the top 10, it's Nocturne. And I really like Nocturne just because you can do... His clear time is pretty quick. He has a decent counter jungling, not as good as some other champions, but he's got a decent counter jungle. The only reason he's so far down, and I think that he's great, but the only reason he's so far down is his ganks aren't perfect before 6. They are perfect after 6, but before, you have your Q, which is going to help you move a little bit faster in the lane, your E for your fear, but you have to wait until after level 3 to gank, and, well, you don't have to, but it's, it's frowned upon not to, and actually you want to almost do a first clear. So, that's why he's a little bit too low, and the other thing is, I feel like when you build Nocturne, he can either be built damage or heavy sustain, and to build damage, which I think the jungles should facilitate kills, not take them, you have to get a lot of kills. So I don't really like it. He's just like in the middle of the building tree, but I think that he's definitely one of the top 5. I like the way he can move around the map, and his presence in the team fight's really nice, especially scaling into later game where you don't really have to be near your team and you can still get into that team fight if you need to. So, all right, Cody, we're going to move on to your number 4.
Alright, my number 4 will probably be on Dave's list a little later, but my number 4 is Nautilus. Obviously, he's a CC truck. He has 3 different forms of crowd. 1, 2, 3. He has 4 different forms of crowd control. Excuse me. Okay, so he gets tanky as the game goes on, and because of his massive CC utility, he just continues to be extremely effective in team fights. And he has decent ganks pre-6 because he has a hook and a slow pretty early on. And then when he gets to level 6, his ganks are almost always a kill because you have, again, 4 forms of CC. And then the reason I have him so low, once again, is he, first of all, is really counter-jungleable.
Yeah.
Long word. He's generally not very high health when he's taking red buff or anything kind of around that. So you can counter gank him in the jungle at this point, or you can also utilize the fact that he's a pretty slow clearer. So if you play someone like Mundo or Lee Sin or a couple other junglers, you can really get in there and take his red even before he gets there. And this really hurts him because he does rely on levels to get tankier quicker. So, and the other thing I really don't like about him, I guess, is he's very slow. You can kind of compensate this with boots of mobility, but when it comes to late game, you really have to be in a grouped setting for him to be effective. If there's a lot of counter, I guess, split pushing type of things going on, it's really hard for him to be super effective because he doesn't shine in a 1v1 situation. He's more of a 5v5 team fighting champ. So those are kind of the reasons I have him at my number 4, but I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about him later.
All right, and moving on to my number 4. I'm sure we'll hear more about this champ later. It's my number 4 is Alistar, and he just recently came back from the dead in the jungle. I know that he used to be a jungler all the time. People used to always jungle with him, and now people are starting to get back to it, and I love it. The ganks out of the jungle are insanely good. The CC afterwards is insanely good. You can usually just come in with a W. You really don't even need to flash or anything. And even honestly, when people try to flash away, you can almost always headbutt them into something and then knock them up. And just kind of just chain CC, especially with a mid champ that has a small amount of CC. You can really get in there, which is nice with him. Also, past 6, Alistar can dive. I think everybody understands that. Also, his clear isn't amazingly fast. It's decently fast, but what really shines out with him is you can heal yourself in the jungle, which is really nice. Like I said, I really like him. He is more of a jungler for a team that has plenty of damage. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't do damage. He actually does a decent amount of damage, but if you're
he's almost like a second support, would you say?
Yeah, it's almost like a second support, but with a little bit more damage. So I kind of like it when my jungler can kind of get carried away and help, and almost and everybody here is going to know what I'm talking about, but when your top and your jungler are just kind of wrecking things. Love that when that happens in a game. I know Cody does because he's usually one of the 2 champs doing it. I'm usually not because I play AV mid, AD bot, but it's fun to watch, and Alistar isn't really fit into that role. It's just more of almost like a second support, but more damage. And because he's so tanky with so much CC, it doesn't feel that way, but that's what it is. So, Cody, go ahead with your number 3.
Alright, my number 3 is Nocturne. He was just recently talked about.
Nice.
So I won't go into him too much. But the reason I have him a little bit higher than Dave is, right now, with Karthus and TF type of team comps, you can really add on to his presence in the map, which I know it's kind of really conditional, but when a Nocturne ganks you with his ultimate and there's extra damage coming down, just between the ults, not even adding any of the damage after they both ult, that's at least a good 300 to 400 damage on a champ instantly. And that can be done almost anywhere on the map. So you can turn, 2v4s or 2v4s into 4v4s almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's one reason I have him a little bit higher. But me and Dave's reasons for putting him on the list are pretty much the same. He has a decent clear time. He ganks pretty well at 4 and then really well at 6. One other thing I kind of don't like about him is while he does have crowd control, it's delayed. So any sort of flash can kind of negate it completely. Whereas because it's not instant. So that's why he's at my number 3. But. And
Cody mentioned the word conditional, like it's based on a team comp, and like that's just kind of what junglers are. So we're probably gonna get slammed. I feel like we're gonna get slammed for our list this time, but I don't really care because whatever. But it's all conditional.
This. Nocturne, a couple weeks ago, it was probably a couple weeks ago, but
it was like a month and a half ago.
When global ults didn't get nerfed yet, he would have been my number 1 because while it's conditional, those conditions were almost always being met. So you would put him at number 1 because you could just pick one of those other champs and it'd be a super effective combo. Now it's not as effective, but he's still a good jungler besides that, and this just is a little bonus.
And I was gonna say, like, not too long ago, just everyone remember, like, the odd one played him in a tournament and everybody played him for like 2 weeks. Like, just flavor of the month, played it like crazy. So that's not like they didn't do anything to him. So he's still the same.
They nerfed his like health regen or something.
Well, yeah.
But nothing.
Yeah, nothing drastic. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. All right, I'll jump in with my number 3, and it's Udyr. And I like Udyr for the reasons I was talking about why I didn't like Ali, but because he can really do a lot of damage. It's almost dumb what that champion can do with his turtle stance and with his phoenix stance and with his bear and tiger stance. All of his stances are freaking insane. So Udyr, I'm not going to go into it because people understand, but he has an insanely fast clear time, a really easy jungle. If you have not jungled yet and you guys are like newer to the game, pick up Udyr. Would you say it's the easiest clear, Cody? Maybe Warwick's easier?
Warwick's probably a little bit safer, but Udyr's definitely the easiest to...
Yeah. You
hit 2 buttons, all clear.
Yeah. It's so easy, and he's a solid jungler. I would say that Udyr is like the token jungler. Which, Cody and I have like these token champs for each role.
There's a reason that Udyr can solo Baron before any other champ in the game.
Yeah, he's
a good jungler in general.
Yeah.
If I could though, I will say one thing about Udyr that probably is also keeping him off the top of Dave's list, and it's that he is kiteable.
Oh, he's very kiteable. Yeah, very.
If you're going against people that know what they're doing and have a sufficient amount of slows, it'll be very hard for you to use your abilities because you just won't ever be in range.
Yeah, and I will say he doesn't. And I know like people are gonna blow up. Like bear stance is whatever, but he doesn't really have like a gap closer. Yeah. Like his bear stance, whatever. Like I said, whatever, but he doesn't really have one.
To gap close, you gotta flash bear stance, and you can only do that once every couple minutes.
Yeah. So his ganks are solid. I mean, it's not. He's a good champ. That's why he's in my number 3. I love him on my team. I think he fits well on teams. He's got, with a frozen heart on him, or frozen mallet, sorry. He's very good. So that's why I would put him up there. All right, Cody, go ahead with your number 2.
My number 2 is Maokai. Yeah, and Dave doesn't like this champ very much, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about him.
That's fine.
All right, Maokai has some of the easiest ganks to pull off in the game. He has a targetable snare that has a ridiculous range. It follows flashes, which is pretty important. So if you activate your snare and they flash away, your snare will follow them, and then you can get behind them and knock them up with his Q. So that they're really easy to pull off, especially on the mid lane, because it almost reaches all the way to mid. You just have to take a step out of the bush and you're in range to snare. He has a decent amount of AoE in fights. and he has a really fast clear time if you set up saplings. At least the first clear is. The only problem I really have with him is he falls off late game. This is kind of the same thing about Alistar. He almost becomes a second support. You end up building aura items on him. You get an Aegis or something on him because his damage is kind of lacking late game. But I mean, he has good utility in his damage reduction and his good CC, so that kind of makes up for it.
Yeah, and I will say you're not going to find Maokai on my list, but he actually has decent damage earlier game.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. He has surprising burst.
Yeah, he does have surprising amount of damage. I haven't played him as much as Cody, but I mean, I've played him a couple times to know that it is surprising how much damage he has sometimes. So. Alright, I'll jump in with my number 2. You guys already heard about him. It's Lee Sin in the jungle. I'm not going to go in, we always say we're not going to go in because the other guy talked about it. Almost everything that Cody said. Cody touched on the lack of CC without his ultimate, and I agree with that, but I put a lot more stock into his E for the slow. That's actually, it's really nice because you can Q to the person, but, they're a flash away from getting away from a kill. But the thing I like about him is even if they flash and you haven't yet used your Q to gap close, which you should try to save your gap closers, not to initiate, but to continue a gank, it's just really easy to Q underneath their tower and then W back out to your teammates if you have half-witted teammates, if they're not stupid. So, I had a pretty nasty escape earlier tonight where we got a double, and I dove at level 6, or 5 maybe. It was really early in the game, so it's really early in the game. But you can, I like him for all the reasons Cody said. Insanely fast clear, or not insanely fast, but a nice clear, and pretty easy jungle. So that's why he's my number 2, and I like him on a lot of teams. Now I will say a team with not a lot of CC wouldn't really put him on there, but like I said, it's all conditional. So, all right, Cody, and the daunting number 1. Who do you have?
I have Alistar number 1.
Of course you do. Yeah.
Of course I do. I love this champ. But Dave said a lot about him that I completely agree with. But one thing that he didn't mention that I think is a major part is there's really no chance of being counter-jungled or being stopped from counter-jungling as Alistar. If you're getting counter-jungled as Alistar and you find someone doing it, you have enough CC to keep them in your jungle for your lanes to get there. And because your lanes are closer to your jungle, theoretically, if you have good teammates, they will get there first, and it will be an unsuccessful counter jungle for the other team. On the other hand, if you're counter jungling yourself as Alistar, and you get caught, you generally have enough CC to get yourself out of there, or to stall the other people ganking you for your lanes to make it to you and save you. So at least it would be an even fight at that point. So that's kind of why I have him as my number 1, along with his amazing ganks and his decent clear time. Again, he has low damage late game, but if you build a Trinity Force, you still feel like you're doing quite a bit. So he's my number 1. Some people might disagree with it, but I definitely think he's up there.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with the number 1. In fact, I could easily switch 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 based on my team comp. So just to be clear on that, I can switch either one. And also, for all you guys that don't play that play ranked, at least at my ELO right now, or my ELO, sorry, Alistar's always banned. He's right there with Morgana with being banned. So that tells you something. But for my number 1, I have someone that Cody already mentioned, go figure, but it's Nautilus. And it's going to be for all the same reasons that Cody said, obviously. 4 different types of CC. He hurts. He can do a lot of damage without building hardly any AP. I think Riot recognized this when they lowered his damage on his W and his E. But he's got a slow, his auto attack stun, which is hilarious, and all around great champ. He's got the hook, which obviously you would use late in a gank if you need it. The only thing with Nautilus is, he's not good at 1v1 at all. If you get in a 1v1 with a jungler, he's not going to win. If it was against a Maokai or an Udyr or an Alistar or a Lee Sin, he will lose that fight almost every time. Unless it's later game, and even then, you're probably going to lose. And the other problem is, with Nautilus, I forgot it. I'm gonna have to edit this part out. Hold on. Oh, he has an not insanely slow clear time, but his first clear and a half, or first 2 clears, are not up to snuff. Like they're kind of too slow, and like Cody was saying, like he when you're taking red, unless you have like a perfect jungle, you're not doing so well. Like it's not like you're not taking red and then going and ganking a lane because you're kind of low. The only thing with both of our number 1s, and I think the reason that you could say that it's number 1 is if that champion's on a team, they are stronger late game, 100%. It doesn't matter who else is on the team. Your team's going to be stronger late game. So that's why you got to kind of throw them on the team. I think Nautilus is really underplayed, but he's probably number 1 because he's like near and dear to my heart, and I love him. He's like one of my favorite champs. So that's why he's my number 1. Cody, did you have any like honorable mentions? Like somebody that just barely didn't make your list?
Yeah, I think me and Dave both had the same one. Malphite.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say Malphite and Skarner are like the 2 that are like right there.
I completely agree with both of those.
Yeah, I'd just rather have the other 5. Like they're both like really close, but just
Skarner's cool if you have a really strong laning phase, but you're kind of lacking a late game and an initiation type of team. It'd be like if you had, gosh, I can't think of any champs off the top of my head, but LeBlanc's the only one I can think of right now, and that's a terrible example. But that kind of champion that they're not necessarily going to need a ton of help in lane. A couple showings just to know that they show your presence on the map, I guess, would help, but they wouldn't really need tons of ganks. Skarner would do really, really well on a team like that.
And he feels really blue dependent, more so than other junglers. So if you have like a cat mid, like which would go in the same line as like LeBlanc, like you have like a cat mid who can kind of not need ganks if they can get ahead, but that's why he just kind of barely missed it out of like the 20s or so junglers. Like almost like a fourth of the champions can viably be jungled. So,
Malphite.
Malphite just sick.
Yeah.
It's just
it
just didn't.
It feels like the nerf, while it wasn't super strong, there are now other champions that do essentially the same thing, like Alistar and Nautilus.
That's exactly right.
Feel a little bit stronger.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Because they all have that really cool initiation that gets in there and messes people up. But now Malphite can't build armor and still do tons of damage. Like if you look at Alistar, Nautilus, and Malphite, they first nerfed Nautilus' damage because it was too strong, so he moved down from the top, and then they nerfed Alistar, so he moved down a little bit, but not as much, and then they nerfed Malphite's damage. So now, in my opinion, the order is Alistar, Nautilus, Malphite. Dave has the other top 2 switched.
Yeah.
But
we're both pretty high on Alistar, and we're both pretty high on Nautilus, so it's not like, I mean, they're in the top 20% of the junglers, but yeah, I mean, Malphite's just exactly what you said when you said his ult is just kind of like an Alistar ult, or not an Alistar ult, but like an Alistar headbutt pulverize, except for he can do that again in 12 seconds, whereas you can't with Malphite, but he's close. He's close. I'm not going to complain if he's on my team. Like, just throw him top and throw Alistar in the jungle. Problem solved. But
better yet, throw Alistar jungle, Nautilus.
Oh, I know.
Alistar bottom, Nautilus jungle, and Malphite top. And
I know.
All three.
Just be real nasty. All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. Cody, you have any last words?
Not this time.
No, he never does. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Go ahead and put it in the comments below. Give us a like or dislike. Don't dislike the video if you dislike what we say. If you think what we say is stupid, then dislike the video. Everyone dislikes it. They're like, well, my top 5 is different, so I dislike the video. Don't be that guy. You're being a jerk. Like, that's not... If you just... Not if you disagree. If what we're saying is like, if it's stupid. Like, Annie's the best jungler.
So this is a little post note. When you're looking at stuff like this on the internet, don't be looking at it to be like, oh, I'm going to copy that. I'm going to play Cody's list, go Alistar, then Maokai, and pick the champions in that order if they're banned. Or not banned, I guess. But look at them as just a reference guide. Be like, oh, this guy has this ideas. Maybe I'll try that.
Yeah, almost use it like a stepping stone.
Yeah. Like, you don't gotta take what we say as truth. You just gotta take it as an idea.
Exactly. All right, well, thank you for tuning in again. And like I said, first person with a sweet idea for the next top 5 will do it. And don't do tops or 80 carries, because we'll do those on our own. Just give us something fun to do. All right, thanks. This is Dave Piper with Cody Lolopkis for our top 5 junglers. Thanks for tuning in.